Welcome to BWI Live. It's Thursday. It means we're going to be talking about recruiting and football today here on the BWI Live show. If you're a regular, you know that. But, there's a lot of new people watching the show because of the topsy-turvy season that we've been going through. So just in case you're unaware, I'm Thomas Frank Carr. You can call me T. Frank. This is Ryan Snyder. He's our recruiting reporter for Blue White Illustrated. Sean Fitz is going to be joining us in just a little bit. And we got a jam-packed show today. And I always start the morning on these recruiting shows now, Ryan, with oh boy, what are we going to talk about? How are we going to phrase it? And is there enough to fill the show? And then by the end of the show, I'm like, oh no, there's way too many things to talk about today. So great reason just to say up top, subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. There's just too many things going on for us to talk about it in just 3 short hours here on the BWI Live show on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It's $1 right now to get in on the coaching search conversation for a week to try us out, and then you can decide if you want to join us for a year. I'm fairly confident that if you do, you're going to be addicted. We've had people that have started here on the YouTube show that have joined us. One of our regulars, Cyphered Carbon, was super excited to see him join us over on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. He's a regular here in the chat and in the replies on our videos. So come join the family. It's a great place to be. So Ryan, thanks for your time today, and I always appreciate you doing this.
Of course, man. It's Thursday. Time to talk recruiting. Normally, I would enjoy talking about these predictions and this game and how exciting this would be. I don't know if you guys remember back in I found a screenshot the other day, in August or whenever the preseason poll came out. Remember, this was 1 versus 2, and Florida and Georgia were a top 15 matchup, and there was, I think, Tennessee, Ole Miss was on there. We get all excited about those preseason matchups, and you circle those weekends of man, this is going to be amazing. And then sure enough, here we are, and it's not quite as juicy as it once was, but.
And something that was brought to my attention because I'm not a schedules guy, I'm not a calendar guy. What's in front of me is the thing I'm working on, and then we'll get to that when we get to that. This is the last time that Penn State and Ohio State are going to be playing for question mark. We don't know the next time they're going to be on the Big Ten schedule together here.
Yeah, it'll be 3 years. So they're going to rotate Michigan and Ohio State every 2 years, right? So the next 2 years will be home and home with Michigan. And then after that, so what will that be? 26, 27. So 28 will be the next time Penn State plays Ohio State, 28 and 29. And then they'll rotate again. At least that's the plan as of now. So
as of now. And the Big Ten definitely won't expand. And there definitely won't be changes to the structure of college football in the next 3 years that will change all of those plans. I remember the the 2021 season, I think it was, where we had all these Big Ten football schedules going out and into the future. And then here we are now. Didn't think at that point you weren't talking about UCLA. Chris brings up something here from the Blue White Illustrated message board, the Lions Den. He says 300 pages on the coaching search forum. It has been a marathon and a sprint at the same time over on the message board, where everyone is dialed into every single hiccup that Pat Kraft has, and also it's gone on for now a month. Which is kind of where we're starting on the show today, which is the recruiting efforts and how those are kind of placed at the altar of finding a new coach at the moment. But, there are still the things you've got to do, and that is including recruiting and offering kids that Terry Smith and his staff feel like are quality enough to be a part of the class of 2027. So a new round of offers went out recently, Ryan. Here's just some news. Can you just tell us the news of who was offered?
Well, I'll start by saying that, obviously James was let go, but everybody else still has to do their job, right? They're contractually obligated to. The recruiting staff still has guys that they got to scout. And clearly with the regular season wrapping up last week, they found some guys that I think they already had a lot of interest in, that I expected to maybe get offers at one point or another. And sure enough, those kind of went out last night into this morning. I'll start with running back Kelvin Morrison at a Hickory High School in Hermitage, PA. Obviously, Penn State had Keemon Spell on board for a while. Isaiah Rogers was showing a lot of interest to others. And I think, Kelvin Morrison, if those guys maybe aren't in the mix, Kelvin Morrison's a guy who probably has an offer a little earlier than he does. Now, I was also under the impression, that they wanted to see how he obviously improved on the field too. Maybe I think academically too, there was a little talk that, maybe that was something that was holding Penn State back to see how he improves there. But, the offer went out last night, and, you can look at his offer list there: Ohio State, Miami, Florida, Tennessee. Certainly a quality player. What it means moving forward, though, is kind of where I get a little tripped up about it. I mean, one thing I would say is he's a Western PA guy. Obviously, if Terry Smith were to stick around, that could certainly have an influence. I thought it was also interesting they offered Zachary Gleason. That was just this morning. Central Catholic cornerback, another 2027 guy. Again, if Terry Smith were to be part of this next staff, that makes sense for them to start, getting a little more aggressive with some of these guys. But it's just so hard to say at the moment. But Gleason, one thing I will say is, like, Gleason was always kind of a guy I had circled high. He's always been higher on the board than I think many realized. Certainly like a top, I would say 15 or so corner that Terry Smith has always really liked. He's camped at Penn State, I think, at least once, I think maybe even twice, visited 5 or so times. So there's always been a lot of interest, and he has a lot of interest in Terry Smith and all those things too. But it's so hard to say right now what that really means moving forward until, a coaching, or a new hire is, and where does that assistant staff go?
How does that? And I know I'm asking you a question you don't have the answer to, but it's just a wondering out loud that we bring up in this situation is what happens to Western Pennsylvania recruiting? What happens to the regional recruiting that Penn State has done and has established such deep roots in these areas to get Quentin Martin or a Keemon Spell or the Amani Christians of the world? And then when you couple that with James Franklin actively looking for a head coaching job, being rumored into a Virginia Tech job, it just feels like there is this balance of power shift. It's obvious there is a power vacuum with Penn State in flux here in the Northeast. There had been a dominance of the middle third, right? The top, and maybe even more than that, maybe the middle half. The top guys are national prospects, as we talked about on the show, and they're going to go where they go. But then everything from Western Pennsylvania through Virginia, and they were working into the Carolinas as well, was part of Penn State's footprint. And again, I'm just kind of musing out loud here. What happens to that? How do you build that with the new staff? What does that look like? Like, where are the strengths of this program with the new coach? And is Terry Smith a part of it because he's been so integral to the western part of Pennsylvania? It's just, I know that I'm saying the things out loud that everybody's been thinking, but man, there are so many questions about recruiting at this point.
Well, for 2027, the new staff better start in Pennsylvania, because this is shaping up to be one of the best classes in PA in at least a decade. Like I said, I think we talked about this when the 1-300 came out, but that 2021 class, I want to say, I think that was Rucci and McCord and Harrison out of St. Joseph's Prep, all those guys. Like that was a stat class too, and this one has even a little more, 4-star pop as of now. Of course, some of those guys are going to drop out, but as I've said before, Gabe Jenkins, there's some other guys that I think deserve to maybe jump in too. So this is setting up to be a really good class in PA. These guys got to absolutely take advantage of it. Well, there's Maxwell Hiller making all of us look very weak. He's a beast, by the way. He's a great kid too. Whatever happens there. I mean, obviously, whoever the next staff is got to make him a priority. I think it's going to be tougher though with this change with Maxwell, because he was very close to Trout. I mean, Trout was one of the big things keeping him. Not saying I think Penn State was always going to be a top 2 or 3 school that he really decides between, but Trout wants to have a really big influence with Hiller, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and for people listening on the podcast version, it's Maxwell Hiller casually doing 295-pound power cleans in his high school gym. And so I was going to get to that, absolutely. So there's there's a couple casual things about this of no weight belt. That's a flex. Doing it in socks, which is also that's a real lifter. And let me tell you, my wife competed in strongman and powerlifting competitions, and she is anti-shoes when she's lifting. So I always take that as a sign of respect of oh no, he's for real. This is, and the way, again, it looks casual here, just the strength here. This is natural strength. This is the stuff that you're dreaming of if you're an offensive line coach looking for a 5-star offensive lineman. What it all means, how it all works out. But you mentioned Maxwell Hiller. I saw that the other day, and I just wanted to flex my own lifting knowledge to be oh yeah, that power clean is absolutely legit.
I like the beat. You hear the beat. You got music playing in the background there too, Frank. I don't know if you know that or not. But
do we? Oh,
something's playing.
Oops.
Something's playing.
I had it muted. It was supposed to be muted. But of course, how all that works on here, I don't actually know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so who are some of the other guys they've offered recently?
Komari Hudson too. let's skip that. No one cares about this.
Okay.
Time will tell. One thing I want to bring up, like we're talking about, coaches and how it impacts things. Like that's why, like I do think like Terry Smith. Like if there's a guy you got to keep around, it's got to be Terry, right? And Terry's done nothing. Obviously, they didn't win the Iowa game, but I think most fans understand Terry's strengths, and there's a reason he was the associate head coach. He's an excellent coach, a guy that would be coveted by other schools if he decides to go elsewhere. I mean, to me, he's a lot like the Larry Johnson discussion, back in the day with Bill O'Brien, and then in the Franklin, and just kind of how important everybody wanted Larry to stick around, and of course it didn't work out that way. But it kind of reminds me of that too, where it's like, man, if there's one guy from this staff with really strong Penn State connections and all those kind of things, Terry is that guy. So it's just really going to depend on, in my opinion, who they go after as a head coach. Because if they were to go for a younger coach, maybe an assistant, I know Brian Hartline keeps getting thrown out there. Time will tell. I think it's just a little too early to get excited about anything. I think certainly discussions are being, or they're certainly looking into certain guys, and he makes a lot of sense. I think Will Stein makes a lot of sense as well. Personally, I kind of like that route for Penn State. I think if you're trying to close that 10% gap that Franklin wasn't able to close to the very top, this is your chance to take a risk, in my opinion. And it's a whole new era of college football. So go young and see what happens. If it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But I still think it's a risky enough proposition that you're trying to close a small gap, that taking a little bit of risk here isn't maybe the worst thing in the world. Anyway, to go with that though, if you do kind of go with those assistants who are, going to be moved up to head coach, well, that's where it makes it a little more interesting to keeping a Terry Smith around. Even some of the other guys with Penn State ties, whether it's Ty Howe or Deion Barnes or Dan Connor. Yeah. So time will tell. We'll see. But I do think just Western PA, it's been really good to Penn State. Terry clearly has a very good connection there. He gets, for the most part, the guys he really wants. There's a couple that drop through, but for the most part, they crush it there. Terry would be a fantastic guy to keep around.
Today's show brought to you by our good friends over at My Perfect Franchise. Our good friend, I should say, Andy Ludicky, who is My Perfect Franchise, the guy behind everything. If you are looking to leave your current corporate rat race job, you are in middle management, you know how all the innards of a company works, but you're just working in the innards of the company, and you want to change that, give Andy a call, because he is an expert at buying into franchises, which are a business for you to own and manage, while still having the support of a corporate structure around you. That's as far as I understand business, and as far as I understand how these things work. That's why you need to call Andy, 404-973-9901, or Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. I've talked to him a couple times over the years. We've had calls where he's like, so here's how it works. And like, he'll give us the information, and he has this, he loves this stuff. So it's an info dump about, here's what's the newest, latest thing in franchisees, right? And you've got like health and beauty and medicine and hormone testosterone replacement and things like that. And like, I don't know anything about any of those things. He just got back from a conference where he's learning about all this stuff, and he's eager to share it with us. But we're just podcasters. So if you want the information, go talk to Andy, get on his calendar. And here's the great thing is his services are 100% free to you. He's built up a pristine and stellar reputation of referrals amongst the franchise companies, so that when he sends them somebody, they know to take it seriously. And that's the great thing is like, he'll even, if he needs to, talk you out of it. He's not there to waste your time and money, because this isn't for everybody. You've got to have the financial backing. You've got to have the understanding of the business. You have to find the right fit within your area, and how much you have to allocate to it, right? Time, all those things. So give him a call at 404-973-9901. Appreciate Andy for being a longtime sponsor here on the show. Also want to give a shout out to our sponsor here, which is Ann Lusk Realty. The purchase or sale of a home is a major life stone. It's a huge life event, and it deserves guidance of experienced professionals, not a plastic sign that says for sale by owner. That's a red flag. You don't want to be making a transaction that is hundreds of thousands of dollars and locks you into a deal for 30 years at, 15 to 30 years if you don't know what all the details are, if you don't know what all the things mean. You know what? I didn't know what I didn't know what escrow meant. I had no idea what an escrow account was. I had to have that explained to me by our realtor. I also had a lot of other things explained to me by our realtor, and some of them that weren't explained, we found out when we moved into the house. So Go with the best. Proud supporters of All Things Blue and White. Their team of knowledgeable, detail-oriented agents serve clients throughout Happy Valley. They are throughout the state of Pennsylvania, in York, and of course here in Happy Valley as well. So they offer both local expertise and global connections. Whether it's buying your first home, maybe you're into real estate as an investment. Maybe you're making money from Andy's side, what you've got going on with Andy, and you want to invest it in some real estate, whether you've got luxury, real estate, land, whatever it is. It's a seamless and personalized real estate experience start to finish. 814-808-7588. Again, it's 814-808-7588 or LuskandAssociates.com. Lusk & Associates, Sotheby International Realty, where experience meets excellence. Okay. So let's get into today's recruiting conversation, which is the news that's happened recently. There's been some decommitments, some flips. Just want to get into these facts and information for people. Give them all of it in one place so they don't have to go chasing down tweets. They don't have to go chasing down things that are all over the internet. Kind of a one-stop shop conversation. So can you catch us up on the things that have happened recently, basically since the last time we talked here on the show, about which of these Penn State commits are looking elsewhere and which ones have moved on elsewhere?
Yeah, so 2 decommitments this week. Jasir Rogers. Oh, I guess I should say, Jasir Rogers formally decommitted. I mean, it was kind of obvious that was going to happen. I thought when you looked at Oklahoma and Alabama, some of the schools, but he took an official visit to Oklahoma, immediately committed to Oklahoma. Seems very excited about that. Good for Jasir. It's a tough one for Penn State because that was the guy we all had circled as not this year or last year's Chaz Coleman, but like the most exciting, like, oh man, this could be really big for them, moving forward in that wide receiver room. But it's no secret. I mean, Jasir is an incredible athlete, and, I hope he does well at Oklahoma. I know Penn State fans are bummed about that one, but yeah, I thought once Alabama and Oklahoma, some of those schools came calling, it was always going to be very difficult for him or for Penn State to retain him. Especially when you consider, if you got those schools kind of doing a little bit of a bidding war, which it didn't get to that point apparently because he committed right away. But that was kind of always my.
Jasir's an interesting guy.
Expectation.
He's been interesting in all of this, right? Where he committed very early and was locked in with Penn State until all this happens, and it feels like the recruiting aspect of it and all those things you just outlined, they don't seem to be highly important for a guy at a very mercurial position like receiver. It's just he seems to be a fascinating kid.
Same with Daryl Carey, too. I mean, I think Daryl Carey was the other one who decommitted this week, which was kind of why we're going to that segue there. Daryl was the lowest ranked guy in Penn State's class at the time. And I think we've talked about this on this podcast a ton. We've written about it a ton. Like, absolutely should not be that way. He is a very, very good athlete, but he never really went out to many camps, really pushed himself on like a 7-on-7 scene, all those kind of things. And I think that played a big part in him going under the radar a good bit, but without a doubt, a very special athlete. Before he committed to Penn State, I think Maryland was the only school he even saw. He took a handful of visits to Penn State, committed, I don't know, after like 3, I want to say maybe 2 or 3. It was really quick. And of course, he decommits now. Right now, all he has is, I believe, an official visit to Maryland soon. I'm not exactly sure it would be this weekend or in 2 weeks, but either way, it feels like he's just going to probably end up committing to the Terps, which will be interesting because obviously Penn State will get them back on their schedule here soon, and we'll see how Daryl Carey grows and matures. But aside from that, Jazeel Hart ended up committing to North Carolina. Not really a surprise there. It felt like his best option, and despite the fact that he has an official visit set for a few weeks from now, it felt like he didn't want to pass up on the opportunity. What happens with Belichick long term, we'll see. I wouldn't be shocked if they give him another year. North Carolina is playing better. They're starting to look like a better team now. They just don't have good quarterback play. That's their biggest issue there. So wouldn't be shocked if Belichick gets another year to try and right the ship there a little bit. But
if he wants to be there, that's the other thing is like, this is all temporary. Like the reality was this was all a halfway house to the next NFL job, which who knows if it comes. Like, he might not. This might be the last stop, but that's, I would always feel nervous if I were a recruit committing there for that reason.
Yeah. Aside from that, Kevin Brown is finishing up his visit with West Virginia today. And Messiah Mickens was at Oklahoma yesterday. I've been trying to figure out Messiah's actual schedule because we know Indiana is going to get a visit. Indiana plays at Maryland this weekend, so I'm not exactly sure how that's going to go down as far as, maybe he's going today. But obviously, Indiana will have to fly out tomorrow at the latest. So Messiah's been really quiet with everybody as far as like his actual dates and where he's going, but we know them, and South Carolina appears to be in the mix as well. South Carolina was always a team. He visited South Carolina last season with Lex Cyrus, and at the time that just looked like he was going with his buddy, but clearly there's always been a little bit of interest in the Gamecocks, so we'll see how that plays out. But really not a ton to discuss this week. It was kind of what I expected, which was Desir Rogers would eventually end up somewhere. I'm kind of surprised a little bit he didn't go to Alabama and take that visit, but at the end of the day, he found his home. So good for him. And, we'll see what happens with Daryl Carey, but I would expect him to go to Maryland, and other guys are going to just keep on visiting. So here we are.
It seems to be that as you mentioned earlier, the slow playing is the best possible option for Penn State, because when guys go other places and other things are presented in front of them, that it ends up being an obvious situation where if you have options, you shouldn't be. No one wants to be in limbo. No human being likes being in the state of change. Even the ones that say they do, they've just gotten better at it than most of us. But nothing expresses state of change more than the NCAA recruiting calendar. It is an absolute moving target, and the things that you think are going to be there are not actually there. It is all a mirage as we go through. The sport in general goes through its metamorphosis into the next thing that it's going to be on the other side. So this is something we talked about last week. We previewed this a little bit because I know you guys have been talking about this behind the scenes. You wrote about this now over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com.
Yeah.
What are the changes you found that you want to talk about today?
So last week, I put that story together, and we went into it on the show, I thought, and tried to explain it the best we could. Back on, September 4th, NCAA put out a press release saying that they proposed a full December dead period. And what that means is no on or off campus visits. You can still talk to recruits via phone, FaceTime, texting, all those kind of things. But, a full December dead period, this would be the first time that's ever happened. Okay. So that was proposed on September 4th. On September 17th, I believe it was, somewhere around there, the NCAA announced the changes with the transfer portal, which is that it's totally moved out of December now, all January 1 through 15th. That's going to be it. Okay, they announced that. But there was never a formal announcement on what happened with the December dead period. I saw a tweet from Ross Dellinger saying that, it's going to happen, it's been proved or whatever it may be. And, of course, Ross Dellinger is the best of the best, right? And I think a lot of people saw that and were like, okay, it's 100% official. But the problem is they never changed the calendar. They never actually changed the true calendar. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing the story last week, and it's still a quiet period. And I asked as many people as I could before publishing that of hey, is this wrong? I know the dead period was discussed, but I've never seen anything formal. I went through more freaking NCAA press releases this week than I hope to do ever for the rest of my life, but trying to find where I may have missed this December dead period being locked in, and there was nothing to be found. So kept digging, making calls to different people. And I don't know if those calls led to calls to the NCAA or whatever it is, but sure enough, on Monday morning, we wake up and that's a true dead period. The calendar was switched. Shout out to Blake Alderman. He was he's the Florida recruiting reporter. So needless to say, we've been talking a good bit on different things and, different mindsets on how to cover this situation. And, he reached out, was like, hey, the calendar is different from what you wrote last week. And, I was kind of surprised to see it. Kept digging all throughout Monday. And then, Greg was able to reach out to somebody he knows the NCAA and they confirmed that it is a full December dead period now. So there's a lot of repercussions for that, in my opinion. The story I wrote last week was about how guys who were planning to enroll in January, which is the vast majority of Penn State's remaining commits, and let's be honest, whoever comes in here, if they're coming from a P4 school with quality commits themselves, I'm sure a lot of their current commits are the same way, which of course we players that Penn State's new staff tries to flip. They don't have to sign in January. So if there was a December dead period or a December quiet period, which allows on-campus visits, they could have came in, taken a visit, even an official visit, one of those 2 weekends, and then just sign their term papers wherever they end up, whether that's their old school, some other school, Penn State, wherever. But now that it is a full dead period, that complicates things, I think, for Penn State as much as anybody, because the reality of the situation is a lot of these guys want to meet the coaches in person. And look, they can still do that over text and stuff. And maybe a Matt Sieg of the world maybe a Terry Wiggins of the world, some of these guys that are want to still stay at Penn State, maybe that's all they'll need because they've been to Penn State enough, have a couple conversations over the phone, get to know your would-be position coach, and that'll be it. But the bigger issue is, okay, say, whoever comes from whatever school, they got a handful of P4 commits. They want to get to Penn State, and they didn't sign maybe in that December 3rd, 5th period. Well, now they can't visit.
They have to do it sight unseen if they want to follow their coach, the coach they recruited them.
They could come up here all by themselves and just walk around campus by themselves and do that kind of stuff. We saw that a lot during COVID. But it's not easy to get to State College. It's expensive to get to State College.
December.
There's a lot of things. In December.
Also, in December, like if going into buildings is kind of important at that point too.
Right. So we always kind of knew that the transfer portal was going to be the main thing. When you're going through a coaching change, that never disputed that. I always thought it would be very heavy in that way. Now, especially if they don't get a hire done before that December 3rd, 5th early signing period, I think that makes it incredibly difficult for any of these guys who want to stay committed to Penn State to do it, because they're going to have other financial offers and they're going to be, foot to the fire. Are you going to pass this up for, a potential situation where you don't even know the new coach? And it makes it very difficult.
The hard sell right there is going to be very enticing when the door is closed for you to kind of like make a more informed decision, because at that point, all the information you can get during that period is in front of you.
Right. So it'll be interesting, man. I just think it's for Florida and LSU and some of those other schools, might not, it'll impact them. Don't get me wrong, but I think that I just truly believe it has more of an impact really on Penn State and its location and travel and all those kind of things than maybe some others. But it's just really going to depend on the new coach, though, too. I want to stress that that's going to have such a big impact on whether it really matters or not, because they could get some new coach that was like, I don't even care about 2026. Like, it's all about portal. Yeah, that's not how Penn State's really ever done things. But also, it's really been James and I mean, in this modern era, it's really been one guy's mindset, and that's really all that mattered. So who knows what we're going to have here as far as moving forward and the balance between high school and transfer portal.
Yeah, and it is fair to say also that the other schools that are going through a coaching change are also in this same situation. So it is a level playing field for the coachless teams for sure. The other thing is, Ryan, as we talked about, as you just underlined with James Franklin there, the other reality could be that the coach that's coming in be like, you know what? Here's X amount of dollars to make all of that okay. And then that from the top down becomes, okay, there's been a lot of people that have signed sight unseen in certain places or sight once seen in certain places. Yeah. So, and I don't want to overemphasize that, but there is that as well. Like you can try and smooth over some of that if you're the coach and you want to be aggressive in that way. But, there are the limitations then of how often you do that and how many players you have by the end of that particular process.
But again, will they even get the chance to do that if it's not before this early signing period? Because again, I still like it should be before the early signing period. But even if it is, we're talking like a 3-4 day span there where you can try and do that. And sure, you'll be able to. I think some of the guys again who are committed, really want to be at Penn State, that makes sense for. And I can see a handful of that working for them, but it's really trying to bring guys that are already committed to you at your previous school over where that makes it a lot more difficult. And maybe there will be a handful of guys who've been to Penn State before, they know what it is, and that'll work out. But it could also be the opposite where you got like a Will Stein coming from Oregon or something like that, where it's not at all that case, right?
Yeah.
So it's just really hard to say. I just think that December dead period though is the first year it's ever happened. So these big schools are going to be the guinea pigs as far as what they could really accomplish as far as high school guys go. And we're about to find out how much of an impact it has on them either way.
I would love if we could all schedule when they're going to make this announcement, because like it's also the holidays because like I got Christmas parties to go to in December as well. And last year it was obvious what the plan was. It was going to be covering the team during the playoff run. This year it's like, all the things are unplanned in a very big way, a very important way for Penn State. So that's neither here nor there. Just an interesting thought for everybody of like your December, we thought it was going to be one thing, then we thought it was going to be another thing, and here we are on the third aspect of what this could be. And speaking of the third aspect of this show, Sean Fitz joining us here on the BWI Live Show. Fitz, you're in perfect time. Welcome to the show. we're now going to get into Penn State practice.
You gotta win, goddamn you, Tyler. You gotta win. Get to the corner.
I should have realized, Fitz, in the first month of the season, 6 weeks of the season, virtually nothing changed. I'd say even going into training camp, nothing changed on the offensive side of the ball for Penn State football. It looked the same players were in the same positions. There was every once in a while a guy would be missing or would be there, but everything was the same. There was very little to report. And since that point, there's been something new and interesting every week. And this week we were inside for the first time, so Haluba Hall presents a different picture, which then gives us a different opportunity to view different things. So I just want to start with you. Usually on the defensive side of the field, I love starting with this because I wasn't over there and I get to learn something, so selfishly we're starting there. What did you learn last night for Penn State football during the, was it briefer than normal open practice period? It feels like they're getting very brief.
Yeah, it presents a different picture. It presents very little pictures because the lighting in there is terrible, but it was a pretty typical session for the defense. I mean, just the defensive line and the linebackers were inside. I think the defensive backs were outside while we were there. So it was kind of our offense from last week. We get shut out of them. Not that there's anything crazy to take away from the defensive backs, but defensive line was what we were looking for going in. Of course, Penn State, I think, got 16 snaps out of Zariah Fisher at Iowa. He was not practicing last week while we were there. Jalen Harvey was not on the trip to Iowa. He was back. Fisher was back. So get you some reinforcements there, and that's kind of what matters on the defensive side of the ball, especially for Ohio State, high-powered offensive attack. So I don't think there's too much to take away. We're still looking at the same sort of drills and the same sort of lack of overall personnel. I am curious to see where things stand with, Don DeLuca, Cam Smith, the freshman. I know Terry Smith talked about Alex Tash earlier this week, but Tash was wearing a scout team jersey, and Cam Smith was in his number 26, which I think Tash was also wearing number 26. So, but we've seen Cam Smith work in there, and I don't know that it's the answer, but I think it's an option to sort of play him a little bit more as we get to the end of the season. You're looking at that 4-game redshirt rule getting pretty clear. I think the only one that's kind of still up, not really up in the air, but still a question mark is Jameer Joseph, the cornerback. He's been playing some nickel. He's played a little bit more than I think we thought. He's got 3 games in so far, and with 5 to go, it seems like that one's moving along quickly. And I think he's done some really nice things while he's been out there. Of course, he had the big pick earlier in the season where he ran it back. I'm very curious to see if there's anything that Penn State can do personnel wise to sort of right this ship. And I'm not sure that there is right now. And that's kind of, other than getting guys back and getting healthier, I'm not sure that it changes a lot.
Yeah. Help me out here. How do I talk about the quarterbacks and what we saw yesterday? Because I do want to respect the subterfuge that's going on right now with Jackson Smolik participating in practice. They, as you saw, if you're watching on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, normally the quarterbacks are just in their jerseys, right? They're just in regular jerseys. All the quarterbacks were in non-contact jerseys in front of us. The first time we've seen that since the blue-white game, right? So those are the jerseys you saw basically during the blue-white game. So, Fitz, they were clearly doing things yesterday to cloud the picture of what's going on at quarterback. But I don't think it was that cloudy. Is that fair? Is that fair to say? Yeah.
I mean, okay. Outside, I mean, you obviously got to specify Grunk, the starter, and the guy that you hope gets all the snaps this weekend. Is that the way that you would put it? Terry Smith said earlier this week that Beckham Kritza is an option. I don't know what the scenario is going to be like there, because number one, I don't think he's ready to throw in against a non-Ohio State team or a non-Indiana team. But to do that to someone that's clearly not ready is not ideal. Jackson Smolik clearly hampered. When you got a cast on your arm, you can do that as a defensive lineman. As a quarterback, it's a little bit different. So
this is what I wanted to because that's the part that I was like, how are we talking about this? Because they clearly had him in a long sleeve and they put a glove on his hand to make it look as if he were fine. But if you watched him catch a snap as a quarterback, he was obviously not. And so that Yeah, that was the part where I'm like, we can all see this, right? You can see that there on screen, but it was that was the performative aspect of what they were doing yesterday. The other aspect of this that I thought was interesting is, and this is again where I want to be super careful. They are trying to do as much as possible to add to the offense during this time. They did not let us see the offense last week. This week, so let me take you back to previous years and how things have gone. Penn State's coaching staff would work on plays with individual players or clusters of players in front of the media, but not show you like the full play. And it got to the point of like, people were putting stuff on social media that was obvious. Like if you knew football, you're like, oh, I know that route combination. It just depends on where on the field that they're doing it from that we can then predict what that is. So they went down to working with single receivers. And yesterday they were not doing that. So they lined up the entire second string in front of the media to try and create a wall to shield some of those things from what they were doing. So they are installing new parts of the offense over these 2 weeks. How they're doing it, what they're doing it, that's the part that I think obviously is the part that we're going to all find it together on Saturday. I was encouraged, just to say, like, I was encouraged by what I saw. I think there are some smart things that they're trying to do. And that's the part where to then respect the house rules of not talk about scheme of what you see there when they are obviously in a position where they're not exactly trusting us, but also not exactly trying to hide it because they have to use this time to put in the offense that they want to run. There is a boundary there that, that tension to me was the most interesting thing from practice, where the offense is clearly being different and clearly doing different things, and yet how are they going to pull it off when they're just practicing it for 2 weeks? Now they got to play the top team in the country. Are they going to be ready with some of their new things that they're trying out?
It's one of those things where it's like, how wide can you let it rip? Because you're a 3-4 football team that's clearly, the big picture is out of there. Like it's not coming back around anytime soon. So it's like, okay, well, you can loosen up, you can play a little bit crazier, if you will, but also you're going to Ohio State, and if you do that, it might burn you even worse than it probably would have burned you just playing your regular game plan. So I think that's what you're looking at right there is like, yes, get Kobe Howard and Tysier Denmark into the game. Does it change things fundamentally for Penn State's offenses structurally, scheme-wise? I don't think so. But at the same time, you've got to balance risk versus reward there. I would do it, but I'm not a highly paid football coach. That's more of a video game mentality right there. It's just
right.
Like, what do you got to lose here? But at the end of the day, these guys are trying to balance and trying to get it there. I mean, it's just coaches look at this so much more analytically than, and I'm not using the 4-letter analytics word, but like they look at it more analytically than we do. Like we're sitting here saying run the touchdown play, and they're like, this is not it. So I think there's more of a balance there. But you're right, they did show a little bit more. Just looking down there, trying to pick up. They're not going to come out running the triple option or anything like that, but they're going to come out trying to do some different things to gain an advantage, and that's what it's all about. And unfortunately that's the point that we're at in the season is where you're looking for any sort of shred of advantage versus going out and imposing your will on a good football team.
How do you adapt what you do and tweak it the least amount so that there are the least amount of errors? Because that's the thing Terry Smith said yesterday after practice, and he said it on Monday, is we can't make mistakes. This has to be super clean football game, perfect game. And so if you're changing a bunch of stuff and asking guys to do new things that they have been practicing for 2 months, that is a great way to create mistakes. So how do you augment one or two things about what you're doing in order to create a schematic advantage that you didn't have before? So just for the sake of a good game and for something new, I hope some of it works so that we get to see something interesting. And that's what we're getting into now. Here to end the show, we're going to be talking about Penn State, Ohio State, talk about the offense, the defense, and then, of course, give our score predictions. We got an interesting question here from Eric Fasano in the chat. He asked a 2-part question, which we're going to get to now. He says, the struggle with Jim Knowles' defense, is it primarily A, players not fully understanding the scheme and responsibilities, hence playing slow and coverage busts, or B, Knowles requires different athletes versus what is on the roster? We talk about this actually quite a bit in our special podcast coming up this evening with Spencer Holbrook from the Letterman Row, the Ohio State site, who joined me for a crossover episode that we get into a lot of this stuff in the kind of the history of it and how it worked at Ohio State and here. So we will get into that a little bit deeper later in the show. later today. That'll be coming out this afternoon or evening on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. But Fitz, I wanted to get your thoughts on this quickly to start.
Both, because I think the back seven is the first part of that question, and the front four is the second part of that question. Penn State does not have the defensive line to run what Jim Knowles wants to run. They've been overwhelmed physically, which is you haven't said about a Penn State football team in a while. And I'm not sure if that is a current batch of guys situation or if that is a defensive schematic situation. I think maybe the former is what you're looking at there. So, and that's where it starts, and you can't go from there. And then you get to the second, not the secondary, this is the back seven, and linebacker and safety, the two toughest positions to learn. I think safety has been better. Like, it's come along and there's been progress there, even if you can't really see it. I mean, tackling needs, everybody needs to tackle better. But there's a reason that he's playing three linebackers, and that's because he does not trust them. And outside of that, outside of Rojas, Campbell, DeLuca, not even Wiley, who's playing in a 4-3 Sam spot instead of being one of the two base linebackers, doesn't seem to trust anybody outside of that. And I think that lends to not fully understanding scheme responsibilities and being overly complicated. Like, I think that there's a meet in the middle situation that Penn State had to do, and I don't think Jim Knowles has done that. And it's been very
that was the expectation too.
Right.
Like, I want to rewind to that was the expectation of, at the start of the year, James Franklin had his same conversation he did after Manny Diaz left, where there has to be a melding of the two schemes. There has to be a bridge between what we did before and what you want to do, and the same verbiage and nomenclature and everything. That conversation still happened, and then it kind of felt like Jim Knowles then just did what he always does, and there wasn't the integration and install acceleration that was expected. And that is, part of this conversation of where we are now and why they've had to change things, because it didn't. And the funny thing is, Fitz, I didn't see, to the point, a lot of coverage busts. They did not make big mistakes that left wide open holes in the secondary. It was just that they didn't make plays. And that is talking about the running back situation. It's a similar thing of reacting versus being proactive and anticipating. And Penn State did not get to the anticipation stage on defense.
It's the conversation we had coming out of Oregon. And Ryan, I'm really sorry. Like, you haven't talked since I came on, and that's not by design or anything like that. I think you look great today. But no,
I like the hat.
The conversation coming out of Oregon was, yes, Penn State held them to 17 points in regulation. That's awesome. That's great. But they also, as you said, did not make plays. They won one tackle for loss, and that was the first time since, I want to say, 2015 or 2014 that Penn State had just one tackle for loss, which is not, I mean, that's their MO, and it has been even under Brent Pry, under Manny, especially under Manny, and then Tom Allen, which I still think Jim Knowles is a better defensive coordinator than Tom Allen, but that's a schematic statement rather than he has performed better than we saw last year. But going back to it, there's no pass rush. There's nothing up front that is getting it to flow backwards. And when you say coverage breakdowns and stuff like that, the coverage breakdowns happen when there's time. And Penn State has allowed time. And when they've allowed time, you haven't seen a ton of coverage breakdowns because the quarterback starts running and he runs for a lot of yards. And that's kind of like, it's just a waterfall that has gone well over the cliff, and it's been very frustrating to watch. Now, the positive there, Julian Sain's not going to run it this weekend, and got a wood desk here, knock on that. But he is. I think his best output this year is 12 yards on the ground, which it tells you a lot about, number one, their offense and how much they want to preserve him for the long run, and that is a theme for this team altogether with the offense. T. Frank, I don't know if you talked about the way that they run their offense and the way that they shorten the game on offense, even though they are the dominant team. But that should help Penn State this weekend in this regard. It doesn't change it a lot for what's happened and what is going to happen schematically against a running quarterback in coming weeks. But it's also, if you're grasping at straws, that's pretty good one to grasp at, because Julian Sain's not going to put himself in danger this weekend. Yeah,
and Sergeant BB here, he says Penn State's defense has forever changing, no consistency. That is the price of success, I will say. Brent Pry, successful coordinator, goes to be a head coach. Manny Diaz, successful defense coordinator, goes to be a head coach. Tom Allen, got a team to the college football playoff, got a job at Clemson. That is a success from his perspective of going from a head coach to defense coordinator to a lateral move. He didn't go out and retire from college football after leaving Penn State. So this was the plan. This has been the institutional plan to try and have defensive consistency by hiring coaches from the same coaching tree that have similar philosophies and use talent in a similar way. But the differences are what we're seeing this year, and that is the difference in success. And people were also talking earlier in the chat, and I think it was from Eric Fasano also about the loss of Abdul Carter and the pass rush that Fitz pointed out. So Ryan, welcome back to the show. After you carried us for the first 30 minutes, so I wanted to give you a break, sit on the bench, have a series off, back in the game. I'm handing you the ball. What do you think of Ohio State, Penn State? Let's start with Penn State's offense. And let's talk about their matchup with this defense, which I have some questions about. I think that there's some ways you could test this team. I don't know that Penn State's the team to do it, but what do you think?
Well, number 1 in points per game, number 2 in yards per play, number 1 in third down conversion rate, number 1 in red zone scoring. That's not very good for Ethan Grunkemeyer in this offense going into Columbus. They allowed 10 points or more once this year against Illinois, and that was Illinois got over that buffer to 16 because they scored a touchdown with like 3-4 minutes to play, I believe, in that game. So they've absolutely been dominating schools. Texas is what Texas is. They're probably better than Penn State, truthfully. They struggled. I think Washington's a decent team. They kind of stuck around a little bit, but obviously Ohio State pulled away in the second half. Minnesota, they romped. Wisconsin, they romped. I mean, to me, I actually changed my prediction. You have a different score on there than what I actually end up changing mine to, T. Frank. But I just don't know how. I don't know how. I originally had 14, but the more I look at it, how do you expect Penn State to score 2 touchdowns in this game? Do you? I kind of struggle with it.
Well, no, that was not my prediction.
Okay. And that's where I struggle with it. So, when you add in, I know you want to talk about offense, but you add in the fact that Penn State's defensive line has been pushed around by inferior offensive lines compared to this one, and I'm not including Iowa in that. They're a quality line, but others have. It's going to make it really hard for me to think that Penn State can stick around in the second half. Maybe they're within a touchdown or 10 points in the first half, but teams have worn down Penn State all year, really, and I kind of just see that happening again in this one. So, do you want my prediction or not? I don't know if you're ready for that.
We have a full end segment here of our predictions.
Okay,
but
terrific.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer. I just don't know. All the stats say that unless Penn State comes out incredibly motivated and there's some new kind of offense that, let's be honest. I don't even think it's that. It's going to take Ohio State beat themselves, right? Turnovers and all those kind of things, massive penalties, which Ohio State's fine with. They rank really well in penalties too. So, to me, it's just one of those situations where Ohio State's got to keep Penn State in the game, and over the years they've never really done that. So,
well, Fitz, that's I guess the point of Ohio State's offense. Maybe it's better to start there. It's not an offense that wants to blow up the scoreboard in the first quarter. This is a team that's gone into the half 17-0. Like, their defense being as locked down as it has been has given them kind of the leeway to be Penn State 2024. Watching this offense, even some of the plays, they run Penn State's tight end flood play. They have a shovel pass to a tight end. They have started to line up a receiver in the backfield, so there's a dive and a pitch option for the quarterback to use, in kind of like a fake dive pitch. There's aspects of this offense that feels very ground and pound, subterfuge, Andy Kotelnicki, and it doesn't feel like they're the same team that is going to line up in shotgun with 3 receivers and chuck the ball all over the field. Is that an advantage for Penn State, or is that a disadvantage that they're also not going to have the ball enough times to score? And they're not going to have enough times to go 3 and out twice and figure it out.
If you look at, so I've got the NCAA statistics here. So everyone's pretty much played 7 games. I'm sure there's a couple that have played 8. North Carolina has run 414 plays in 7 games. They're 2-5. Sam Houston has run 435 plays. They're 0-7. Ohio State has run 437 plays, 3rd fewest in FBS, and they're 7-0, and they're dominant. That tells you that this team, when we go into this game, and I was texting with Alex Gleitman from Letterman Row earlier today and yesterday. We were talking about the sort of the game plan. I'm like, well, Penn State's got to play Northwestern ball here. Shorten that game. Like just sit on the ball as much as you can, shorten that game. He's like, well, Ohio State does the exact same thing. And Ohio State does it really well because you look down their schedule. Okay, 14-7 against Texas. It's a huge game. We talked about how these big programs, when they play each other, sort of clam up and they don't play their typical game. But Washington, 24-6. I went in there looking to the box score to see Washington like extending drives, to see Washington sort of, time of possession way up. Washington was 1 of 10 on third downs there. That doesn't make any sense. Now, it might be a ending drives efficiency type thing for Ohio State, but 24-6 at Washington means that both teams shorten the game. Minnesota 42-3, Illinois 34-16, Wisconsin, a team that we've seen not play well, 34-0. So you see the number 1 team in the country, you see the most efficient offense in the country, and you think, okay, well, they got to be scoring 45, 50 points a game, and that's not the case. They're shortening things, and I think it's big picture. We talk about during the non-conference saving things for the big games or whatever. Well, I think Ryan Day, what he's doing, he's saving his players' bodies for that run that he has to make in January. He's seen it before. He's done the studies on how much they did last year, and they had to play a full extra game than they're going to have to play this year because they're going to buy. So it's very fascinating to me how Ohio State has not been the same offense that we've come to expect, but they're still overly dominant. And that's going to be very interesting to me. So maybe this game's over by 3:00 maybe this game officially ends at 3:00 on Saturday.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're looking at. And Penn State would be very well served to play into that mentality of shortening the game like that.
It's interesting, and I'm struggling because I've been trying to write these things, but I've been doing so many other things like practice and doing extra podcasts that I haven't been able to get some of these thoughts on paper. But you look at this offense and the way that they've been operating, they are, I think, last year they operated 11 personnel 69% of the time. They're at 45% now. They're playing 2 tight ends more than they're playing 3 receivers. And that's my curiosity. Is it more that they... because I don't think that their 2 tight end packages are overly successful. Like, a lot of the things they're doing are incredibly inefficient for what they could be doing. And it's just fascinating to watch a team go through that and
but also
not play with its fastball.
Pick up 3rd and 8 because they're receivers.
Yeah, because at some at their quarterback. Yeah, this is I guess this is the thing that I've been thinking all week is like, this is what Penn State wanted to be this year. This is the exact team Penn State thought they were building with those transfer receivers, which is run the ball without option football, try to run traditional concepts. Drew Aller went under center this year more than Penn State's put a quarterback under center in the last 11 and a half years combined. And they couldn't generate an offense built on traditional principles to get receivers open and have that, okay, it's 3rd and 4. Now our quarterback needs to be the guy who's going to the NFL next year as a top 10 pick. Just those parts didn't work together. It's interesting to watch, built in a lab, that exact same thing with a sophomore quarterback, and it's successful because he's really good, and I don't want to take that away from him, but also those receivers are good, and their contested catch situations are all really good. The one area and going back to what I was talking about with Ryan, what I saw on film of this team against Big Ten teams did not meet the stats I found about its pass rush. There are so many clean pockets for the opposing quarterback. And that's in the Washington game, that's in the Illinois game. If there's a halfway decent offensive line and Ohio State rushes 4, there's not a compelling pass rusher out there that makes me think, okay, that's going to be a problem for Penn State. And their blitz packages, while they are the New England Patriots pass rush blitz packages from 2019 or whatever time that was, 2018. They are still college football players doing all of these things, so it's not at the same speed and ferocity that you saw at the NFL level. So this scheme de-emphasizes pass rush. So is that intentionally, or do they not have the horses where if Penn State gets some clean pockets and Ethan Grunkmeyer can find open players, you do have an opportunity to find seams in this defense if they play zone coverages and he can throw the football. But again, I always say, if you're counting your ifs, you're in trouble. Like, if that happens, and then if that happens, then they may be able to get a pass play. So yeah, that's the path to victory, right? Is that there's no pass rush. they're not going to be able to run the ball. There's no pass rush, and Ethan Grunkmeyer leads them to victory. That's the path to victory. As much as Terry Smith is talking about the run game and being able to outrush Ohio State, I believe that to be fundamentally true. But the thing that gets him over the top to win the game is Ethan Grunkmeyer hits some big plays. Because
but I think
those need to be
game,
there.
I think the run game thing is more time of possession. Like,
yeah,
we want the ball. Like, we want the ball as much as possible. And that's kind of where the run game psychologically puts you, I guess. So yeah, but if they can have success with the run, that's certainly possible. But if again comes back around to that's kind of what we're playing with right now.
That's what Terry Smith said last night. If you do your job right, you win. But how many ifs are we counting? I just realized that put that together. Okay, so let's get into one thing before we get into our score predictions. This is from Eric. He wants to have a larger conversation about recruiting at Penn State. He says, stop chasing 4 and 5 stars without the resources to win. Start playing money ball like Kirk Cignetti. Ivan Kamaju is a good example. Can't just change coaches. A new mindset is needed. Just my honest opinion. Fitz, what is the fact and reality about what Penn State was doing at, recruiting? Were they chasing 4 and 5 star guys, or were they doing what Eric is suggesting, and it just wasn't turning into every diamond comes out of the rough for them? So I want to know what the facts and the reality of this is, because it's a fair conversation to have about they're not going to be getting the Brandon Finneys in this new environment, but there has to be some path forward to find the talent to come, to get over the top when you have the right scheme and all these things we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, that everybody chases the 4 and 5 stars. They're 4 and 5 stars for a reason. Like, that's and I'm not saying they all hit or anything like that, but like, you look at all the successful programs, their classes are very successful. That's not because they have good lobbying schemes behind the scenes trying to get everybody rated higher. It's because they get the better players. You look at Penn State's class of 2026 right now, and this is this kind of flies in the face of this, because Penn State had what, Ryan, 20 commits heading into official visit season, and they went all 4 and 5 stars. So they held up a lot of those guys that they felt confident in their evaluations on. Some of them, I think, were good evaluations. Some of them, I think, they got across the line maybe a little bit sooner than they could have or should have. But no, I don't think that's an expectation at all. The failure there is when you get into those 4 and 5 star battles, which again, this is about accumulating the most talent. When you get into those 4 and 5 star battles and you don't have the resources to come with it, then that's a problem. Or you don't, or you aren't willing to donate the resources to, or not donate. Donate's the wrong word. If you're not willing to allocate the proper resources to that, then you don't get the 4 and 5 stars. I think they loaded up on guys that were Moneyball guys, if you will. And here's the second thing here. Indiana is an extreme outlier. It is a clear exception, not the rule, but now everyone has seen it work, and it has worked phenomenally.
They are the Josh Allen of the college football program building of like, we all should be trying to be Indiana when it's an exception.
Yes. And there have been coaching changes very similar to that, where it's been flat out disasters. There's no stand, like Indiana is not the standard. Indiana is the hope, like the hope among hopes, because they've done an amazing job. They've gotten a lot of those guys, especially those JMU guys, and a lot of them have hit, and that's not going to happen everywhere. That is a credit to the staff there. That is a credit to Cignetti. That is a credit to the guys that he brought along with him, and they've played with that chip on their shoulder. And not everybody has done that. And Indiana is functioning and operating at an extremely high level right now. And they're still playing with that chip on their shoulder, which I think is commendable to that staff. But it's also an extreme outlier. And I think that's, if you're setting yourself up to say the next guy is going to come in and replicate what Cignetti did, and this is not just Penn State, this is LSU, this is Florida, this is all the big jobs that are open, then you're setting yourself up for massive disappointment, because it is an extreme outlier. And again, all credit is due. They've done a hell of a job. But at the same time, it's not realistic to think that.
Right.
They hit on the quarterback too. Let's clarify that. Fernando Mendoza is a massive reason.
And Curtis Rourke last year was
right, for sure.
That is the one
absolutely thing. So as far as what I'm sorry, T. Frank, I cut you off there. Would you
to the original question? I just wanted to get your thoughts on the original question as well about like the program.
It felt like they took a lot of guys that they saw that would be Moneyball kind of guys with the hope that then they could allocate remaining funds to get some of those guys. What happened? Luke Wafel got crazy stupid money. A lot of those guys did.
That Ohio State wouldn't match, by the way. This is always a good clarifier here, is that Penn State was in a situation where they would have had to go well beyond their means to do it. They weren't willing to do it. Neither was Ohio State. And Ohio State is a hell of a better standard than USC.
I mean, Ohio State and Penn State were pretty similar. We know that for sure when it comes to the Wafel bidding. I mean, USC was like just one above and beyond. And look, there's a lot of other examples, though, too, where Penn State was right there, but maybe not the highest offer. And I know they struck out a lot of guys, but they also missed a lot of guys to a lot of top programs. And that's something this new coach has to figure out, that balance of, hey, we got to go all in here a little bit more than maybe what would have happened in the past. But again, it comes back to the locker room, right? And keeping all that together. And, certainly right now, I would say that there might be some issues in the locker room as far as, I don't know about financial stuff, but it doesn't seem like the locker room is quite what we thought it would have been coming into this year. I think that's fair to say. But at the same time, you got to just find that balance. And that's what the new coach is going to have to figure out here pretty soon.
And Ryan, while we're talking recruiting here, it's like which guys from this class are kind of seeing, I guess, their stock rise at the end here, and it is some of the Moneyball guys. It is Isaac Chukwara. It is Julian Peterson, who is picked up that Clemson offer a couple of weeks ago. It is these guys that you took, and you're just like, okay, that sounds good. But at the same time, Elijah Littlejohn, we still have as a 3-star that he was a guy. And T. Frank, I know you looked at his tape from his junior year, and he seems to be a different type of guy. So that is a good evaluation on the front end and everything like that. But it's tough because some of those guys that you do take ended up in a situation like this. And now, as I've beat the drum for before, they're gonna be a lot more expensive to retain because they've been out there. Those other schools know what Penn State was going to pay them. They're going to pay them $1 more or whatever it's going to be. And then they're going to have to come back to Penn State and be like, this new staff at Penn State will be like, well, I mean, I'm not going to take less than I was taking before. And if that's just telling me you don't want me, which is, I mean, it's perfectly fine if the new staff doesn't want them. But at the same time, there's a lot to play out here with 2026. And
especially when you don't have that component of relationship that you did before with Penn State. That was part of what was getting them these situations, was all of the front end work. And now that all is gone, and a new coaching staff is going to be coming in cold in these relationship conversations and in these money conversations. So that's absolutely a fair thing to point out there. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, and I think the hope there, and Rob kind of says it, if you want the best recruits in the region, you have to, allocate the big resources there. And I think that's the part that really not many people want to admit out loud is like, yes, your class looks fundamentally different if you have Joey O'Brien, Kari Adams, those guys that went to Notre Dame, and then a bunch of guys around the region that look like they're going to be pretty good players, and that's not a guarantee. Of course, well, this is the chasing 4 and 5 stars part that we talked about. It's about hitting on those guys, and you can do that with better resources. And I think that that's something there where you can hope that Pat Kraft, and we talked about this on the Tuesday show, will overcompensate for, hey, I made the right decision. I'm going to prove I made the right decision. We're going to spend more right off the bat to sort of close the gap, just break the curve there. And I think that is where the hope lies.
True.
And that's going to be interesting to watch how Penn State fans and community react to that. Some are going to be very excited, and some are going to be counting and doing the math in their head. And I just encourage you, if you want to enjoy football, don't do that part. Don't do that. Just enjoy your football team trying to be relevant.
We always discourage math on this show. Yes.
Oh, yeah, especially from doing it live on air. So let's now get into the numbers. We talked about the game. We talked about everything around the game. Let's now get into our game predictions. Ryan, you've been chomping at the bit to give us our game predictions. I'm still going to put your graphic up because I'm a creature of habit.
You're fine.
Actually, no. What's your score? What's
I originally had 32-14. You can put it up. I did change it 32-10. I just thought about it more, and when I look at some of these defensive numbers and what I really saw from Penn State under Grunkmeyer at Iowa too. I mean, let's not forget the block kick for a touchdown and the gift of an interception that helped lead the points. And then also some of the other mistakes Iowa made, where was there an offsides at one point and then gave Catron a second opportunity. Like when you look at some of that stuff, there was still a lot you'd want to see as far as that Iowa game goes. And now here you are going against Ohio State. It's just hard for me to really think that all of a sudden this offense is going to put up 21 points and stick within this game. I think on the opposite side, Julian Saint's completing 80% of his passes for a reason. I think it's like 78%, and that's because Ohio State has wide receivers that are as good as anybody in the country. Cardinal Tate, Jeremiah Smith are electric. I think Penn State's secondary corners have been all right. As Sean said, the safeties, I think, have improved to some degree, but it's nobody really can match up with these guys. And there's a reason that they're completing and being as successful as they are in that manner. So 32-10 is kind of where I went. I know Penn State fans want to maybe bet it because it's such a big number, but I wouldn't touch it.
How did they land on 32? That's what we all want to know. 32.
How did I land on 32?
Yeah.
Oh,
Safety?
Couple field goals. They're gonna. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't even know.
I love
just
looking at obscure numbers and being like, I don't know how this will work, and then sometimes it hits. So.
Yeah,
well, Fitz,
I guess it would be
us
multiple field goals, but yeah, go ahead.
Fitz, did you give us an obscure number? What's your prediction?
No, my prediction is fairly straightforward. 31-10 is correct there. I do think that from looking into what Ohio State likes to do on offense, that they sort of cut themselves off, if you will, with the number of plays that they run, the number of the way that they shorten the game on their own, which is fascinating to me because it's always the flip side, right? It's always the bad team has to sit on the ball and all this kind of, or the worst team has to sit on the ball. And Ohio State's like, okay, well, we're going to be fine. And by the time we get to the playoff, we will have played 2 games fewer worth of snaps than you did. So they're going to be fresh for the playoff. So I'm curious to see how that's going to work. My wild card here is that Ryan Day wants to make an example of Jim Knowles and decides, okay, well, we're just going to torch you. And I think they're capable of that. Flipping the switch a lot harder than it would seem. We've seen that with Penn State. But if he decides that I want to embarrass Jim Knowles, that the score could be a lot higher.
Yeah, both teams are coming off a bye.
Recruits there. You want to make an impression on?
Make an impression. I mean, what was it? 63-14 in 2013. Is that right? And
it was bad.
That was an example. Yeah.
So. I tried to moneyball this myself. What is how many possessions are they going to have? Let's say that both teams are trying to shorten the game, and it's 8 possessions each. Ohio State scores on 5 of those. If they want to torch Penn State and they feel like they can, that is the way that it's a blowout and that they cover. But I think Penn State's not going to be able to stop them. And the difference in previous weeks is I don't think when you get down into the red zone, this defense is going to be able to stop them for a field goal, where they've been doing more field goal work than they have given up touchdowns. So 5 straight possessions with a touchdown. But as we talked about, Fitz, like maybe it's maybe at halftime they get a field goal and it's 17-10 going to halftime. It's not going to be 35-13 at halftime, I don't think. And so it will feel as if one of 2 ways. Right. Because of everything we just talked about. I think that there's going to be an honorable fight on the field, but no one is really in doubt as to where the game is going to land from its end score and its end result. Yeah.
We
are there though.
On third downs sorry, I mean, I have one more thing. Penn State's got to convert third downs. They haven't been very good at it. But the quarterback run game from Ohio State is pretty much non-existent by design, and that's very good for Penn State.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it all plays out, because I do think both sides are going to pull out some wild cards, even in a game where, again, like we just said, we know how this story is going to end. It's how the story goes that is going to be very interesting, because I think this game still means a lot to both teams, and it's one that should be entertaining in one way, shape, or form on Saturday. So join us for it. Join us for the Penn State Football Tailgate Show coming up at 9 a.m. Good old breakfast tailgate at the Penn State Hotel and Conference Center inside the Legends Pub. And, of course, we'll have our regular game day content. Our guys here will be on the message board giving you live updates at Ohio Stadium. Greg is going to be there, TBD on Nate, but we'll have all that for you here, including live reaction to what's going on in the game and the Penn State postgame show and our postgame content. All that coming up on Saturday. Enjoy your Friday. We'll be back then here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.